Take a network break. I'm Jonna Johnson.
I'm John Burke.
Grab some virtual banana bread and a hot cup of something as we run through the recent tech news. We've got IoT news from Verizon, more SASE announcements from Cato, AI announcements from Google, and a slew of space networking announcements and more. But first,
today's episode is brought to you by NANOG, the North American Network Operators Group. NANOG meets 3 times a year, and the next meeting is NANOG 97 in Bellevue, Washington, June 1st through 3rd, 2026. Register today at nanog.org. And if you like Network Break, check out our other podcasts, including Day 2 DevOps, Heavy Networking, IPv6 Buzz, Network Automation Nerds, and Packet Protector. Get nerdy tech analysis and compelling conversations about infrastructure, cloud, professional development, and more. Find them all at packetpushers.net.
All right, and we'll kick off, as always, with our red alert. There were 1,273 CVEs created in the week ending April 3rd, with a whopping 10,673 that were updated. Of the newly created, 207 are critical, having CVSS scores of 9 or higher, and 11 scored 10 out of 10. This week, we're highlighting CVE 2026-20093, which is an authentication bypass vulnerability in Cisco's integrated management controller, which is scored at 9.8 out of 10. According to the CVE, there's improper input validation vulnerability in the change password functionality, which means that a remote attacker can send a crafted HTTP request to an affected device that bypasses authentication and can alter the password of any user on the system. This is Cisco advisory on the vulnerability, which is linked to in the show notes, gives the full list of affected gear and appliances. And as always, there is no direct workaround, but there is patched code. So the solution here is update with the patch as soon as possible. Details in the show notes.
Thanks. Moving on, Verizon Communications has settled patent litigation over the antenna technology that it uses in its Internet of Things and fleet management services. The antenna designs that Fractus's lawsuits focused on concern the compact multi-band antennas needed to keep moving vehicles and other assets, mobile assets, connected in difficult terrain or in bad weather conditions. Fractus's patent infringement lawsuit created uncertainty around Verizon's ability to continue using and expanding its IoT services since it was using the antenna designs in question, and so created a significant amount of uncertainty for customers and financial exposure for the carrier.
So basically, John, what you're saying is the big deal with this settlement is Verizon can go full speed ahead with its IoT antennas, not worrying that they have to keep fighting this lawsuit in court and something may happen. So if you're an enterprise user, feel free to use these services from Verizon. Is that the main takeaway?
Yep. If folks had any qualms about using it while it was mired in a lawsuit that might result in them having to stop using the designs or pay so much money that they had to yank up their rates significantly, those concerns are now set aside.
All right. And in other networking news, Cato Networks is going modular with its SASE platform. On March 31st, Cato Networks announced it would begin allowing customers to acquire SASE service in chunks or discrete modules: AI security, SD-WAN, secure service edge, and universal ZTNA. As with its full offering, all services run on Cato's GPU-powered Neural Edge infrastructure, which is a private global backbone of more than 85 POPs. Cato says that each module stands on its own as a complete enterprise-grade solution, and any module can be freely added to any other, and this approach is fundamentally different from a portfolio-based cybersecurity ecosystem, since all the components are built to function as one environment and share a single management console, policy framework, and data lake. The claim is that this makes it easier for enterprises to adopt in a land and expand strategy. I don't know, John, do you buy that?
I kind of do. I mean, I spent a long time in the previous decade railing against security portfolios that were only portfolios for marketing purposes. And whenever you pushed, you found out that every tool had its own database on the back end. They didn't share data with each other particularly well, sometimes not at all. And the management console typically was a pretty thin shell that would then shunt you into a product-specific management tool that was acquired along with the baseline security tool itself from some other vendor. So, Cato built the whole thing themselves built the whole thing as a single thing and now are making it available to buy in pieces, which is,
Yeah,
yes, fundamentally different to me.
it is fundamentally different, but I'm not sure it's necessarily going to be successful because, in general, they're competing against the folks like Palo Alto who are doing a platform play, buy us or Cisco, buy us and only us, and things won't work as well if you don't. So the argument that, like, oh, you can just buy a little chip of a chunk of us seems like maybe a bit of wishful thinking here.
Well, I mean, they've all along had the platform approach. That's how, their bread and
Right,
butter, how they
understood.
started. So they've certainly got that as well. But now they're saying you don't have all these pieces. When you acquire the next one, don't buy a bad solution just because it's bundled with your current solution. Buy a better solution, hoping to then nudge you out of those pieces that you already bought from somebody
I
else.
understand
I
that's
mean,
what the
I
strategy
think it's
is.
reasonable, and I don't think it'll hurt their sales at all. Uh,
Yeah.
I can't say that's going to help, but I don't think
That's
it'll hurt.
that's kind of where I landed. Might help, can't hurt, but the problem is I think we're moving past a feature function purchase for a lot of these things. People are making strategic vendor purchases. So again, they can always make a strategic vendor decision to go with Cato, but yeah, can't help, might hurt. Okay.
Wait, strike that, reverse it. Can hurt, might help.
There you go.
Okay,
Can't
well,
hurt, might help.
speaking of can't hurt, might help, and actually should help, Microsoft has introduced private application gateways in Azure. On April 3rd, Microsoft announced that Azure Application Gateway V2 now supports a private application gateway mode. To support tighter enterprise security, Azure customers can now deploy an application gateway instance that has full network isolation and only private IP connectivity, because up to now, it's been
Mm.
required that every application gateway have a public IP address so that it could communicate with Azure's own control plane gateway manager. That put a lot of limits on how customers could restrict exposure using network security group rules. It put limits on route tables, and it prevented the use of forced tunneling of network traffic from point to point. Um, with the private application gateway, those limitations are gone, and you can have a private IP-only application front end, no public IP required for anything. And so you got full control over all the other things as well. One caveat, and it's a small thing in my book, but you have to enable this at the creation of the gateway, so it's not something you can just turn on an existing one. So you're going to be migrating from an old gateway to a new gateway if you want to take advantage of this.
So basically, after 50 years, Microsoft has figured out IP addressing.
Well, the public-private distinction anyway. And yeah, I would say a little late to the party on this one, but glad that they're there.
There you go. And I will buy that. All right. We'll take a quick break from the podcast to cover Packet Pusher's partnership with NANOG. As you noticed, we did a little thank you at the beginning. NANOG is the North American Network Operators Group, which is one of the premier network operators groups on the planet. NANOG 97, yes, it is almost 100 of these, takes place in Bellevue, Washington, June 1st through the 3rd. The format is educational talks from people who are on the cutting edge of networking, along with social events and a peering forum. If you haven't been to an NANOG, they're great fun and also wildly informational. You can do some great human networking while you're there. The hallway track is a key element of having conversations above and beyond the sessions, and the beer and gear is another one. NANOG is big brains solving big problems, and you're right there in the thick of things. The content is by and for engineers. This is not promo marketing by vendors. You're hearing from people you might not otherwise have access to, and you get to talk to them afterwards, which is pretty cool. Again, register for NANOG 97 at nanog.org. You can click on the events link and figure out the rest from there. It's pretty straightforward. Again, nanog.org, be there or be square. And now back to the show.
And we're revisiting a security story from last fall. Thousands of Big IP access policy managers are still unpatched and vulnerable to a CVE announced back in October. According to the Internet Threat Monitoring nonprofit Shadow Server, more than 14,000 Big IP APMs with this vulnerability are exposed online and therefore still susceptible. And this is a known exploited vulnerability at this point. The APM is F5's centralized access management proxy solution and controls secure access to organizations' internet accessible assets. So this CVE 2025-53521, was disclosed all the way back in October, and it was initially classed as a denial of service vulnerability, but just this last weekend was reclassified as a remote code execution vulnerability due to new information obtained in March. The remediation announced last year has been validated to address the remote code execution problem in fixed versions, so get patching. F5 has put out a new security bulletin on this. There'll be a link to it in the show notes.
Yeah, and John, as you and I talked on a different heavy strategy episode, it's a terrible idea to wait when these CVEs come out, because with AI-enabled attacks, these attacks can hit within seconds of the CVEs appearing. So bad idea to wait. Do fix it, please.
Yes, absolutely. 14,000 is kind of a shocking number given how long the fix has been available.
Exactly. Speaking of attacks, there has been yet another drone attack on AWS ME South 1 in Bahrain. Actually, this is the second attack on AWS, and this comes in the broader context of Iran saying that it is going after 17 U.S. tech companies. Actually, I think it's 16 U.S. tech companies and a bank. Interestingly, Amazon was not on the list, but Iran is claiming an as yet unconfirmed hit also on an Oracle data center. Anyway, regarding the AWS hit, according to press reports in the region, AWS's ME South 1 facility in Bahrain, which is operated by the telecom company Batelco, was hit by a drone attack in the early hours of April 1st. Bahrain's interior minister confirmed that the attack had caused a fire. Authorities there expect it was hit by one of Iran's inexpensive, relatively unsophisticated Shahed 136 drones. On April 2nd, AWS's service health status page for the location showed AWS services in Bahrain as being impacted, the lowest of its 3 status levels for disruptions. In its own advisory on the subject, AWS said, as this situation evolves and as we have advised before, we request those with workloads in the affected regions continue to migrate to other locations. There is also in the show notes a link of all the tech companies that Iran is claiming that is planning to attack. So far, again, it's only managed to hit Oracle of the ones on the list, and then Amazon, which was ironically not on the list. But it's worth paying attention to that. And if your operations overall depend on any of these tech companies in that geography, you may want to make some changes to them, is kind of what I would say.
At least go on to alert and be ready for something bad to happen. Absolutely.
Exactly.
And I would just throw in, if your company has operations there or any of your suppliers have operations there, remember third-party risk, second-party risk, third-party risk cascades back to operations that would not be directly affected by something in the region going down. So your suppliers, your suppliers' suppliers, you got to keep it all in mind as you proceed through these next few days. Speaking of bad actors, our next story is about Google. Not them, but the fact that the way they have set up the defaults on their Vertex AI agent system can allow bad actors to compromise those AI agents. So cybersecurity researchers at Palo Alto Networks disclosed a security, they call it a blind spot, that they discovered in Google Cloud's Vertex AI platform. They say it could allow AI agents developed with Vertex to be weaponized by an attacker, allowing unauthorized access to sensitive data and to an organization's cloud environment. According to Palo Alto Networks Unit 42, research arm there, the issue stems from Vertex's permissions model, which by default gives what Vertex calls per project, per product service agents, P4SAs, excessive permissions. Their term. The report says that a misconfigured or compromised agent can become a double agent that appears to serve its intended purpose while secretly exfiltrating sensitive data, compromising infrastructure, and creating backdoors. They reported that after deploying one of these agents via an agent engine, calls to the agent exposed its credentials along with the Google Cloud Platform project hosting it, the identity of the agent, and one. Unit 42 further said it was able to use the stolen credentials to jump from the agent's execution context into the customer project, gaining unrestricted read access to all Google Cloud storage buckets within the project, and that those same credentials enabled access to restricted Google-owned artifact registry repositories, exposing valuable information about the core of the Vertex AI reasoning engine. Google has updated its documentation to better spell out resource, account, and agent relationships in Vertex, and to encourage users to not use the default service agent, but to roll their own and enforce least privilege access on it.
John, that is kind of a mighty worrisome development, particularly in the broader context that Anthropic accidentally dumped all its source code for Claude out there on the internet. It does seem like the companies that are responsible for generating this AI are not as good as one would hope when it comes to protecting it. Is that a legit statement here?
I gotta agree. The extraordinary and previously unprecedented kinds of threats that AI can bring to an organization should be engendering extraordinary and unprecedented levels of security.
And
We are not
strangely
seeing
appear
that
not to be. Yeah.
in the rush to market. We are not seeing that. And like Google specifically, talk about being late to the game, encouraging others to A, roll their own agents, and B, exercise least privilege access on it is kind of ironic. It's a do as I say, not as I
Say not
do
as I
thing.
do. That's
And,
exactly what leapt to mind. Yes.
it's decades later than
Mm.
they should be doing that. They are, in other ways, very responsible citizens on the internet. This is not a good place to be demonstrating uh, poor citizenship traits.
Yeah, I'm not surprised because anytime there's this level of mayhem around a new technology, mistakes will be made, as the old quote goes. But it is a little less than reassuring to see the people who are touting the transformational nature of this stuff not exercising, as you said, extraordinary care in protecting it. Just seems a little weird. It's like, hi, we've got a nuclear weapon that can also be nuclear power. And we've got it behind a chain link fence with one guard dog. you know?
Yeah,
It
and
just
by the way, you could bring your own shovel and dig under that.
and by the way, the guard dog's name is Spike and he really likes dog biscuits, so yeah, right.
Yeah.
Uh,
No, I mean, if there was ever a case where secure by design and implementing zero trust right down to the core of a new service was warranted, this is it. And how come? I don't know.
Yeah. And since you brought up zero trust, I just want to highlight the fact that Google itself was actually among one of the innovators that brought zero
Yeah,
trust to fruition. So it's doubly weird.
I
Anyway,
agree.
yeah. Stack up on dog biscuits for Spike and let's see what else is going to happen. Meanwhile, in some rather unprecedented news, at least when it comes to network break, this may be the first time in recent memory that we have had more space stories than AI stories. We have three whole stories. Normally, our flow is that we talk about business last, and then any space networking. But the next announcement is actually both. SpaceX has filed for its IPO.
Nope, not quite.
Okay.
It's getting ready. It's submitted paperwork to file for its IPO, which is still coming later in the year.
Correct. Yeah, sorry. Having done the whole IPO thing before, we've done that. I kind of conflate the two. When you submit your paperwork for the IPO, that's sort of starting to file. They are targeting the actual IPO itself. They've for later this year. So they've submitted the paperwork. They're planning to do the market launch this year, and they're moving to up the ante. They are boosting the valuation this week from approximately 1.75 trillion to more than 2 trillion, according to Bloomberg News. The value is based primarily on the Starlink network. Weirdly enough, it is not actually based on any of the AI that recently became part of it. If that turns out to be an accurate valuation, and again, it could be changed multiple times before the IPO, and of course, the only thing that matters is what people will pay for that stock once it comes out. It could become the largest stock market listing on record. The Starbase Texas, great company, right? A great city. Starbase Texas headquartered firm could raise as much as $75 billion on launch, according to the report, which would surpass Saudi Aramco's 2019 IPO, which is currently the largest on record. So we're looking for an IPO later this year. It could be a very big one. Of course, all these things are in flux. We shall see, I guess.
I guess. And our next space story could affect how people perceive the value of the Starlink network going forward, because we're seeing a little satellite spat out there as SpaceX and Amazon get into a little tussle over how much space there is in space. On April 1st, and this is not a joke, SpaceX sent a letter to the FCC, the U.S. Federal Communications Commission, complaining that Amazon was violating the orbital debris mitigation plan included in its FCC license by launching satellites into higher altitudes than indicated in their plans, putting them too close to SpaceX's Starlink constellation. According to SpaceX, on at least 9 launches, Amazon, after confirming a satellite's operational fitness in its base 400-kilometer orbit, would shift each satellite up by 50 to 90 kilometers into higher orbits. And SpaceX says even though these Amazon LEO satellites went sufficiently high that it led to unmitigatable collision risks with dozens of operational spacecraft, Amazon didn't update its debris mitigation plan or provide predicted maneuvering plans for these satellites. Now, SpaceX claimed that after just one of those LEO shifts, Starlink satellites had to perform 30 collision avoidance maneuvers within hours. Amazon responded to the FCC that its license provides some flexibility around that 400-kilometer altitude in order to meet mission requirements, and added that, quote, SpaceX only began raising the issues described in its letter within the last several months after lowering the altitude of its Starlink constellation. They further noted that they had been in communication with SpaceX about this issue, but that SpaceX had declined their proposed plans for resolving it and had not offered its own alternatives. The FCC has not yet weighed in. It just reminds me of kids in the backseat of a car, budging into each other's space and then complaining about, their sibling touching them.
Yeah, Mom, he looked at me.
Yeah.
What I find is really interesting is that they're accusing each other of the exact same thing. Starlink is like, you moved your satellites up. And Amazon's like, you moved your satellites down. And the other interesting thing is, what exactly is the FCC going to do about this? I mean, number one, you have to actually validate what happened. You can say, oh, they can impose fines. But it's not clear to me that the FCC has any ability to go, have a look-see and decide where the satellites actually are.
They couldn't do that, but they could revoke licenses. They have a fairly big hammer to swing there. It's like move your satellites up or move your satellites down or lose your license.
But if I'm claiming that you moved yours down and you're claiming that I moved mine up, before you use any hammer, you act, whether it's a fine or license revocation, you actually have to validate who's right. And they don't have the ability to do that.
I'm not sure that they do have to validate the correctness of it. And that under current management, they might even be disincentivized.
John, generally, if a U.S. government organization is going to punish somebody for misbehavior, they actually have to validate that the misbehavior occurred. Yes, I know our current administration is a little wonky that way, but in general, the problem with that is if you don't validate it, you set yourself up for lawsuits and infinite wrangling. So it's just a self-correcting sort of thing. So I guess we'll find out, right? Maybe it'll just fire off letters at each other and grumble a bit and it'll all die down again.
Or, there'll be a new debris field at the edge of 2 orbital overlaps, and
when they start
the Starlink valuation will go down a little bit.
There you go. There you go. That could happen. Moving on to our last news item, Outlook in space. Just for laughs, but it is a true story. Commander Reed Weissman on the Artemis 2 moon mission, which just launched from the U.S., talking to Mission Control in Houston, was heard to say, I also see I have 2 Microsoft Outlooks and neither one is working. Can Microsoft help? around three and a quarter hours into the mission live stream, and Houston agreed to remote in to take a look at the issue. About an hour later, the astronauts received the welcome news that Outlook was back online, although it would appear offline. Nice piece of software. And for Outlook, we were able to get it open. It will show offline, which is expected, huh? It's on, but it shows off, said capsule communicator at Mission Control at around 14 hours, 20 minutes into the stream. I just wonder who the help desk was at Microsoft that got the request. I was like, could you fix this? Yeah. Where's the user? In space.
Have you tried turning the spacecraft off and on again?
There you go. John, and that's it for our episode today. John, where can folks get more from you?
You can look for me at nemerdes.substack.com.
Okay, and I'm John Attil Johnson. You can also catch me at the same place, nemerdes.substack.com. Thanks again to the folks at NANOG for partnering with us, and thanks to you for listening.